Shalom, shalom. All praises going on to be unto Yahweh Bashem Nawashai, by Hashem Rakakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS, or the true leaders of all Israel, set up on earth today. Salutations to the Akim that are doing this work in truth and sincerity. The confusion to face Akim that are joined unto our ranks, risking their lives and their freedom to do so. All right, to push this word to the 1/3, the hopeful elect, man. All right. This is going to be part 2 of the other slavery. Focusing on this book here by the other slavery. All right, by Andreas Resendez. And the never-ending scoff was come from these people that there's a new scoff on my channel. It's just talking garbage on the first video. His name is he just wants some attention. But his name is Rucker. I think Ed Rucker or Edward Rucker. Just talking in circles, avoiding questions, avoiding scripture, history, and it's that lack of history. And the fact that, the 12 tribes got scattered. The northern kingdom went through a different captivity than the southern kingdom, and therefore they have different physical attributes. Because no one is debating that Jacob was a so-called black man. The Israelites were in the beginning. Even still, they still had different skin tones and looks from light-skinned Israelites to dark-skinned Israelites with different textures of hair. Every one of the Israelites, even in the beginning, didn't look like what's the term we usually use? John Shaft looked like Shaquille O'Neal, man. Everyone didn't look like that. All right. Some of them were lighter complected. Some of them had different. Some of them had wavy or curly hair. And the images on the walls in the Valley of the Kings proves that. Also, some of the images of the Assyrian captivity proves that. All right. Some of them had different looks. Okay. But I'm going to read a highlighted portion of this book that I hadn't read before. And this is in the, because I was reading out of the introduction the first time. So I'm going to start in chapter 1, the Caribbean debacle. And see, I haven't read this book all the way through yet. Only small portions of it. But I'm gonna read into it, and then I'm going to go into Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. Okay, this book costs you now $1,000. Okay, and I paid I think like $30 for that book. About a good 8-9 years ago or something like that. And then this one here, the Black Indians. All right, because these two tribes were intermixing and mingling, but they were both Israelites to start off with. Okay, this is also how you get the Black Seminoles of Florida, which through research, this is who my forefathers go back to these people. All right, but that's another story for another time. But let's get into it. This is chapter 1 in the other slavery, and it reads: the Caribbean was a beehive of people, wrote Bartolomeu de las Casas, which also have 2 of his books. All right, it says the most well-known region's early chronicles, who accompanied several expeditions of discovery, as we saw with our own eyes, he added. All the islands were densely populated with natives called Indians. And they weren't called Indians. That's the name that they put on them. The word Indian means savage. And that was a name that was put on them by the conquistadors. All right. Who brought over, when Christopher Columbus sailed, he brought 5 Hebrew interpreters with him. Okay. He didn't bring 5 Hebrew interpreters to look for India. That's just a convenient lie that they now tell. Okay. Now take that into mind. That is fact, historical fact. He came up with 5 Hebrew interpreters. All right. There's plenty of stories and documentation about Luis de Torres. Okay. So this person really exists. I also have a book in the back by Mayor K. Serling, which speaks about him too. And also in that book, it speaks about the natives being Israelites and keeping Israelite customs, and et cetera, et cetera. As a matter of fact, the garment that I'm wearing came from Peru, and it came with the with the fringes on it already. All right. And so why do these people wear garments like that you would see the Israelites wearing, like Joseph, with fringes and borders of blue on them? All right. And a lot of the cultures of the so-called natives, man. Okay. Why would they be doing that? All right. This whole, it's idiotic. It's enough that we got to fight with Esau, but then we got to fight with our own people, be in constant contention with our own people who want to try and make, you know, all the Israelites black, so-called black. Okay. And so, no. So are the Negroes in America, for the most part, of the Southern Kingdom? Yes, they are, without a question of a doubt. Is anyone debating that the man who was referred to as Jesus Christ was a so-called black man? Only people debating that are Edomites. And matter of fact, not all Edomites. Even Edomites are admitting that. All right, so no one's debating that. But the Israelites got spread to the 4 corners of the earth and mixed in with all nations. So as long as the men of those tribes were putting seed in those strange women, which they were, they made children that now look like the other nations. It's mind-boggling how simple that is, but yet so difficult for you idiots out there to accept. All right? As long as you dark, you're Israelite. No, that's some dark people who got white daddies, man. Stop playing. Okay? All of these islands were densely populated with native Indians. The people who greeted Columbus were indeed plentiful. Modern scholars have proposed widely varying population estimates of the Caribbean, ranging from 100,000 to 10 million, which it was definitely in the high millions. But while the initial population is debatable, no doubt that the cataclysmic collapse that followed by the 1550s, a mere 60 years, 2 generations after contact, the natives were so memorably described by Columbus as affectionate and without malice, having very straight legs, no bellies, had ceased to exist as a people. Many Caribbean islands became eerie, uninhabited paradises. Every school child knows epidemic disease was a major reason for the devastation. Europeans introduced pathogens to the natives that had little resistance, triggering virgin soil epidemics. It was like dropping lighted matches in tinder, wrote Alfred W. Crosby in his pioneering work of the depopulation of early America. And so Esau's been on this depopulation thing for a long time. Malaria, yellow fever, influenza, above all, smallpox ravaged the indigenous population in deadly bouts that spread across the islands. Surely some Indians succumbed in pitched battles against the so-called white, they say white intruders, who, after all, possess superior steel weapons, unmatched mobility with their horses, but by far the Spaniards more devastating weapons of germs, right? And Esau is the cancer of the earth. And there is a book that I still yet to get, and I think it's called Steel, Germs, and something else. Guns, Steel, and Germs, or something to that effect. And basically it's a book about how the Edomites came into power here in Americas and wherever they went, basically. All right. It says, and yet the profound disconnection between the biological explanation and the 6th century Europeans reported Bartholomew de las Casas, who arrived in the New World in 1502, which was a mere 10 years after Christopher Columbus sailed. And I can only imagine the atrocities and death in those 10 years before he got here. Because when you read Bartholomew de las Casas' books, it's clear that the things that would happen to those people fit the curses. And then when you know the history of the Bible, you would understand and know that when you read 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, start at the 40th verse, that the 10 tribes came here. Okay? The bulk of the Hebrew relics that are found were found here in the Americas. The oldest ones were found here in the Americas, predating a lot of the ones that were actually found in the land of Israel. Israel was raised and destroyed so many times, and all these different people have lived there. All right, and then you got to think too, those Edomite Romans took the majority of the relics, the ones that were really worth anything, away. They're all probably sitting in the Vatican vaults, man, under the Vatican. Okay. And then the Delicacies arrived in the New World in 1502. Averred the greed was the reason Christians murdered on such a scale, killing anyone and everyone who has shown the slightest sign of resistance, and subjecting all males to the harshest and most inquisitive and brutal slavery that man had ever devised for oppressing his fellow man, treating them in fact worse than animals. It is true that Delicacies was a passionate defender of Indian rights, therefore had every reason to dwell on Spanish brutality, but we do not have to take his word for it. Early chroniclers, crown officials, and settlers all understood the extension of the Indians was a result of warfare, enslavement, famine, overwork, and as well as disease. King Philip of Spain, no Indian companion, probably the most well-informed individual in the era, believed that so many natives died in the early years because of lacking of beasts of burden, and the Spaniards had forced the Indians to carry excessive loads until they broke them down. Just like you remember in Django, he said they would work them in the salt mines until their backs would go out. And when their backs would go out, they would just hit them in the head with a sledgehammer and do them again. And that's nothing new, because they did the same sort of thing in the salt mines of Rome. They sent you to the salt mines to die. All right. And then when you got to the point, they would just literally work you to death. And they weren't going to waste too much food and water on you. When you couldn't work anymore, they just killed you. Okay. This is Jeremiah 50 and 33. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. So you got to remember, during this time, this slave trade started prior to the slave trade of West Africa. All right, and you also have to remember that the first slaves that went into slavery were the ones that were in Portugal and Spain. Okay, the slave trade started with them. Okay, and then they came right over here and started enslaving the Northern Kingdom, which, according to the Holy Scriptures, going back to 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter and the 40th verse. All right, we already used the map. I used the globe to show you the route that they took. Okay, and you just got a small taste of some of the curses, some of the things that were falling upon them, man. All right. Let's go to Deuteronomy and hold that on deck. Because they were forcing them. They were taking their wives and making marriages with them. All right. There was constant rape. And not only were they raping women, they were raping men too, man. You know, like this is Deuteronomy 28:64. And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even to the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone, man. And the Northern Kingdom, they're completely attached to all these images of wood and stone. All right, even still to this day, man. All right. Here, let's go to the Black Indians book by William Lorenz Katz, okay? And this is page 26. And it reads, Christopher Columbus, whose unique seamanship and courage had opened Americas to European penetration, and also began the transatlantic slave trade. See? So the slave trade started. So where's the prophecy that says that the Israelites were going to go into slavery, but it was going to start with another people, and then the Israelites were going to join unto them? So here we are giving you records, man, records of the transatlantic slave trade. All right, starting basically, kicked off with the Northern Kingdom, and giving you the records and the times and dates and places when they were taken into captivity, right along on the same ships with Judah. So where's the prophecy that said that Judah will be on slave ships with other people? There is none. So you black power Israelites, man, you need to wake up. Okay? I'm going to start that again. Christopher Columbus, whose unique seamanship and courage had opened up the Americas to European penetration, also began the transatlantic slave trade. He started by shipping 10 chained Arawak men and women to Seville, Spain. He wrote enthusiastically to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella about the business opportunities because he saw all the gold. And how he could easily, he made a statement how he with 100 well-armed men could take them. All right. It says, from here in the name of the blessed Trinity, we can send all the slaves that can be sold. Then he loaded 1,100 Taino men and women, those are so-called Puerto Ricans today, and women aboard 4 Spanish ships, crowding and stormy Atlantic crossing took a fearful toll. Only 300 survived, but Columbus and Spain had decided to continue the profitable slave trade from the Americas. Seville became the slave capital of Spain. So that was a reverse slave capital of the world. Because in the Atlantic trade slave. Because so the slaves that were coming from the islands, all right, and from South America were being taken to Seville, Spain. And the ones that were coming from West Africa were being dropped off in the Americas, man. It's as simple as that. Okay? Let me pause that. Salakia had to let the dogs out. They were starting to act up. Somebody was outside. It says here, I'm gonna read another part of page 26. They kill them, Indians, because they want to be rich. They have much gold, much of their sole aim. Lacasas concluded that the New World Spaniards had become devils. The Indians were the only true Christians. They were the only true Christians, was the Indians, man. Why? Because they are Israelites. All right? And when you go to the book of Acts, let's read that. Okay? Even though this particular tribe wasn't here, for the most part, when the book of Acts happened, they were already here in the Americas, but according to the flesh, they were Israelites. So the only real Christians are the Israelites, man. This is Acts, I think it's 26 and 11, if I'm not mistaken. In Antioch, they first began to call them Christians. I think it was 20, or was it 11 and 26? Yeah, it's Acts 11 and 26. And it reads, and when they had found him, he brought him unto Antioch, and it came to pass that the whole year they assembled themselves with the church, and they taught much people, and the disciples were called Christians first at Antioch, which is a city named after Antiochus, man. Okay, because that's where the southern kingdom, for the most part, was dwelling. There was some northern kingdom, mixed in among them. But nevertheless, the only way to be a Christian is to be an Israelite. All right, all the disciples and the people they were teaching were Israelites, not the other people. Okay, Lacasas had determined the effort to halt Indian bondage. He pointed out that the Indians died off by the thousands from slavery and European diseases. Forced labor in Spanish mines in Americas was so harsh that the average worker died before he was 26. To meet their need for more laborers, Europe looked next to Africa. The strongest sons and daughters of Africa were seized in there. See, they know who the Israelites were, man. All right. And it said the strongest sons and daughters of Africa were seized in their homes or fields and purchased from local traders that were packed into cargo ships and shipped across the Atlantic. Thomas Bergen, a Dublin youth who for many years served as a seaman aboard a slave ship, described the boarding scene. Children are torn from their distracted parents, parents from their screaming children, wives from their frantic husbands, husbands from their violated wives. The wives were being violated as they're being snatched away from them, man. Okay? sisters from their affectionate brothers. See, if that's not describing Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, okay? See them collected in flocks and like a herd of swine driven into ships. They cry, they struggle, they resist, but all in vain. No eye pity, no one helps. Deuteronomy 28:68. Wow, it said you will be sold into your enemies, man, not your friends. For all you Israelites that want to be down with these Edomites and all that kind of mess, they're your enemy. And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. All right? Bondman is a slave man. Bondwoman is a slave woman. All right? No one shall buy you, redeem you. You are not. This is the punishment that was happened to both the northern and southern kingdom. There is no prophecy that says that the Israelites will go on ships with other people. The northern and the southern kingdom went in slavery together. Okay? I'm going to read an insert from Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. Okay? By Ronald Sanders. All right? This is page 14. The bottom paragraph. And it says, a legend of the lost tribes go back to the divided kingdom of Hebrew antiquity of traditional 12 tribes. 10 were the northern kingdom of Israel, and 2 were Judah and Benjamin, but also that became Levi. Okay, and there's a scripture that I can't think of it right now, but I'll get it for the next sit down, because it's definitely going to be a part 3 of this one. All right, and it says Judah and Benjamin were the southern kingdom of Judah. When the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom in 722 BC and removed virtually the entire population and placed them in Halah, the harbor of a river in Gozan, and the cities of the Medes. So hence why you can mix and mingle so-called Hispanics among men of Elam or men of Ishmael, and they can blend right in with them. All right, you have a lot of Armenians that live here in Chicago that live near Ephraim, and a lot of them has integrated and mixed in with Ephraim and hang out with Ephraim. And the truth of the matter is when they're together, you couldn't tell them apart, man. Physically, because they look similar. Why? Because they serve captivity there. It's so simple, man. You people make it so. The places are not readily identifiable. In fact, the 10 tribes of the kingdom of Israel vanished from history. No, they didn't. All right. The only reason they vanished because they tried to remove this from the Bible, and it's all in secular history where they went to, man. All right, and the artifacts that are here in America. All right, that Decalogue stone. All right, the Bat Creek stone in Los Lunas, New Mexico. The relics were all over, man. All the different Indian mounds with the ancient Phoenician or Paleo Hebrew. All right. The fate of the 2 tribes of the southern kingdom when it was finally conquered by the Babylonians. See, and the Babylonians were what? Hamites. So the southern kingdom was mixing with dark Hamites. All right. And the northern kingdom was intermingled with the lighter shades of brown people of Elam and Ishmael. All right. As simple as that, man. And all right, let me jump down to here. The 10 lost tribes were not forgotten. However startling, that's right, they weren't forgotten. Almost immediately after the disappearance with Isaiah and Jeremiah and the reaching of the apocalyptic heights of Ezekiel and the apocryphal Esdras. This is how we identify, man, because they came where? Into a new world. Okay, and it tells you that Christopher Columbus was studying the scriptures, Isaiah and Esdras. All right. This is Isaiah the prophet, 66:18 and 19. I will send those that escape of them unto the nations in the sea, into Africa and Lydia and the islands far off, have not heard of me and have not seen my glory, and they will announce my glory to the nations. All right. Now I'm going to go to page 67 or 77, Salakia. And then I'm going to wrap this up. I don't want it to be too long. Okay? And it says, all his life, Columbus' idea about geography was permeated with a peculiar religious mysticism. He kept a book of prophecies in which he collected quotations, mostly from the Bible, often dealing with the isles afar off. He was trying to figure out where the lost tribes went to, man. He knew that they of Hiram, and how Hiram, who was the who worked for Solomon, who also worked for both for King David and Solomon. All right. And he was the head of he was the head of the Navy, which worked for Solomon, and how they would go on a trip that took them 3 years, a year and a half in each direction. And so the Israelites went to that same place, which was Asaroth, which was here in America. They went into a place where never mankind had dwelled. No one had ever dwelled in the New World, which was over here, man. All right. A striking element in Columbus' geographical religiosity in his intense and abiding interest in the 4th or 2nd book of Ezra. The 2 apocryphal books of Ezra purport an additional writing by the Old Testament Ezra. See, there's also letting you know in this book that the 1st and 2nd book of Ezra is a continuation from Nehemiah, because Nehemiah was the scribe for Ezra. If I'm not mistaken, correct me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Nehemiah was the scribe for Ezra. So the first, second, third, fourth book of Ezra, the book of Ezra and the Apocrypha are the 4th, 3rd, and 4th book of Ezra. All right. It says, but the 2nd or 4th book is a piece of full-fledged Hellenistic apocalyptic writing that was often regarded with suspicion by the church, and had just as often embraced by Herodotus. Augustine had given guarded approval to Ezra's prophetic claims, and much was always to be made of this by the latter defenders, including Columbus, in the marginal notes of Columbus' copy in his relatively lengthy discourse of 2nd Ezra 6 and 42, which reads, all right. So, and then it gives you a little breakdown on Ezra here. Ezra is a Greek form of the name Ezra. All right. And where Nehemiah in the 2nd book of Ezra, I was right. There is why Ezra 1 and Ezra 2 in the English Apocrypha is referred to as into Romance countries as the 3rd and 4th book of Ezra. All right. Which shall be in the English enumeration. So, long story short, they always knew that the Apocrypha was a part of the Bible, and Christopher Columbus used it as a guide to come to the Americas to find the lost tribes of Israel. So with that, I hope this was an edifying lesson. Shalom and a Baba Ball.